Who's actually getting the most out of the Husqvarna Construction K970Iii 16-inch power cutter? If you're a contractor who spends most of the day on concrete slabs, or a DIYer who tackles occasional sidewalk repairs, this might be the tool that finally lets you finish a job without stopping for belt changes or choking on dust. On the flip side, if you're only pulling out a cutter once a month for small patch jobs, you'll probably find the price a stretch, and you might be better off with a lighter, cheaper rotary saw. And what about the price itself? Does the extra hardware really translate into everyday value for a regular buyer? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's break down why the K970Iii feels different from the typical just another concrete cutter crowd. The first thing I noticed while reading up on the model was the smart tension system. Most belt-driven cutters force you to manually tighten the belt after each use, which can be a nightmare if you're already sweating on a hot job site. Husqvarna's semi-automatic belt tensioner does the work for you. You pull the lever, the belt snaps into place, and the cutter is ready to go. In practical terms, that means you can start a new cut within seconds after finishing the last one, rather than spending a minute or two wrestling with a wrench and a tension gauge. For someone who's cutting a series of 4-foot slabs back-to-back, those saved seconds add up quickly and keep the crew moving. Equally important is the active air filtration system. Concrete dust is notorious for coating everything: your eyes, your lungs, your tool's internal components. The K970Iii claims to be one of the most efficient filtration setups on the market, and the design actually shows a larger intake filter that routes air through a mesh before it reaches the engine. In field tests shared by a few trade forums, users reported the filter staying clear for longer periods, meaning you can work longer without stopping to clean or replace it. If you're cutting in an enclosed space, or on a windy day where dust constantly blows back toward you, that extra filtration can be the difference between a half day of coughing and a full day of productive cuts. Now let's talk about the engine. The X-Torque powerhead is designed for lower emissions and better fuel economy. For the average contractor, this translates into fewer trips to the pump and a lower carbon footprint, something a lot of owners are starting to care about. In real-world usage, the engine feels responsive when you press the throttle, and the fuel gauge stays steady even after an hour of continuous cutting. It's not a dramatic performance boost, but it does mean the cutter can run for longer on a single tank, which is handy when you're working on a remote job site with limited access to fuel. While these features sound great on paper, there are practical trade-offs you should weigh before you click Add to Cart. First, the tool is on the heavier side. The 16-inch model packs a solid metal housing and a robust belt drive, so it sits around 16 pounds. For a professional who's used to a lightweight, handheld rotary saw, that extra heft may cause fatigue during long, overhead cuts. It's not a deal-breaker if you have a sturdy work belt or a hoist to help position the cutter, but it does mean you need to plan for ergonomics. Take breaks, use the side handles, and don't try to force the machine into cramped corners. The next hidden trade-off is the dust-sealed Durastarter. The starter cord is coated to resist abrasion, and the mechanism is enclosed to keep dust out. That's a big plus for durability, but it also makes the starter a bit stiffer to pull compared with a standard start button on electric models. If you've ever had a starter cord that snaps on a hot day, you'll appreciate the extra strength here, but you'll also need to give it a solid tug, especially if you haven't primed the engine in a while. Once it fires, the engine runs smooth, but there's a learning curve if you're used to push-button starts. So who should actually buy this cutter? If you're a professional mason, a contractor who cuts concrete regularly, or a serious DIY enthusiast tackling a sizable patio or driveway, the K970Iii's belt tensioner, robust filtration, and fuel-efficient engine will likely pay for themselves within a few jobs. The time saved on belt adjustments and the longer intervals between filter changes can add up to measurable cost savings, especially when you consider labor rates. Additionally, the lower emissions might be a requirement for city projects that have strict environmental regulations. On the other hand, if your typical use case is a weekend project, say, a small garden path or a driveway repair that only needs a few cuts, you'll probably be better off with a lighter, electric rotary saw. Those models are cheaper up front, easier to carry around, and you won't feel the weight penalty of a 16-inch belt-driven cutter. The sophisticated belt tensioner and advanced